The scent of decay was the first thing that greeted me every morning, a cloying mix of damp plaster and the overflowing bins in the alley below. It clung to the threadbare curtains, the warped floorboards, and the very air I breathed, a constant, suffocating reminder of where I was. My apartment wasn't a home. It was a holding cell between shifts at the diner and endless nights studying nursing textbooks that smelled of dust and desperation. Today, the smell was sharper, laced with the metallic tang of my own fear. It coiled in my stomach, a cold, venomous snake. My phone lay on the peeling laminate of the kitchen counter, a black mirror reflecting the single dim bulb overhead. It might as well have been a bomb. For the past week, it had been my tormentor, buzzing with calls from blocked numbers and texts filled with crude, escalating threats. They weren't for me, not really. They were for Leo, my charming, feckless Leo, who had sworn he loved me right before he disappeared, leaving me with his smile seared into my memory and his gambling debts chained to my ankles. The men he owed money to weren't the type to write polite letters of reminder. They were the kind who sent pictures of your front door, captioned with a simple, chilling question. Home? A fresh wave of nausea washed over me. My mother's prescription needed to be refilled by Friday. The pharmacist, a kind woman with tired eyes, had already let it slide twice, but her kindness couldn't conjure the $300 I didn't have. My wages from the diner barely covered the rent on this glorified closet, and every spare cent went toward my tuition. I was drowning, the surface getting further and further away with every frantic kick. Leo had been my anchor, and now he was the stone pulling me under. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over my best friend Sarah's contact. I hated this. I hated being the person who always needed something, the charity case with the tragic backstory. But pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. My fingers trembled as I typed out the message, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Sarah, I'm in trouble, real trouble. I know I still owe you for last month's books, but I need help. It's for my mom's medicine. Anything you can spare, please. My vision blurred with unshed tears. Humiliation was a hot, prickling thing behind my eyes. I squeezed them shut, took a shaky breath, and hit send. The little blue bubble appeared, a confirmation of my surrender. I set the phone down, face down this time, unable to look at it. I couldn't bear to see the 3 little dots that meant she was typing, couldn't bear the potential pity or, even worse, the silence that meant she couldn't help. I turned to the sink, splashing cold water on my face. The pipes groaned in protest, spitting out a stream of rust-colored water before it ran clear. Everything in this building was broken, myself included. A minute passed, then another. The silence, stretched, thin and taut, amplifying the frantic thumping of my own heart. Maybe she was at work. Maybe she was angry that I was asking again. The snake in my gut tightened its coils. I couldn't wait. The anxiety was a physical force, pushing me back toward the phone. I flipped it over. There was a reply, but it wasn't from Sarah. The name at the top was just a string of numbers, cold and unfamiliar. My blood ran cold. Had Leo's thugs somehow gotten this number? But the message wasn't a threat. It was a command, composed of 5 simple words that made no sense. Stay where you are. Do not move. I stared at it, my mind refusing to process the information. A wrong number. It had to be a wrong number. My hands, slick with a nervous sweat, fumbled with the keypad. I checked the number I'd sent the text to. 1 digit. A single, fat-fingered mistake. I had sent my desperate, pathetic plea not to my kind, understanding friend, but to a complete and utter stranger. The humiliation I'd felt before was nothing compared to the hot, all-consuming shame that now flooded my body. I wanted the warped floorboards to open up and swallow me whole. My first instinct was to type a frantic apology. "Sorry, wrong number. Please ignore." But before my thumb could even touch the screen, the phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "I am sending someone. Do not open your door for anyone else." A different kind of fear, sharp and immediate, pierced through the shame. This wasn't a normal response to a wrong number. A normal person would say, "Who is this?" or "Wrong number." They wouldn't issue orders like a general deploying troops. They wouldn't say they were sending someone. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. Who was this person? A cop? Some kind of prankster? Or something far, far worse? I backed away from the counter, my eyes glued to the front door of my apartment as if I expected it to burst open. The thin, flimsy wood offered about as much protection as a paper bag. The chain lock was a joke, and the deadbolt had been painted over so many times it barely turned. My breathing grew shallow, coming in ragged, panicked gasps. The city sounds outside, the distant wail of a siren, the rumble of a passing truck faded away, replaced by the deafening roar of blood in my ears. I should run. I should grab my bag, my keys, and get out. But the message had been explicit. Do not move. The authority in those typed words was palpable, a strange, invisible force that held me rooted to the spot. It was absurd. I was a grown woman, a nursing student who knew how to perform CPR and insert an IV. I wasn't a child to be ordered around by a text message. Yet, my feet felt like they were encased in cement. It was then that I heard it. A low, powerful hum, a sound that didn't belong in my neighborhood of sputtering jalopies and rattling delivery vans. It grew louder, a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate up through the soles of my worn sneakers. I crept toward the window, my body trembling, and peered through a gap in the grimy curtains. My breath hitched in my throat. Down on the street below, my street, with its cracked pavement and graffiti-scarred walls, was a sight so incongruous it felt like a hallucination. 3 identical black SUVs, polished to a mirror shine, had pulled up in a perfect, intimidating line, directly in front of my building. They were monstrous things, with tinted windows as dark and impenetrable as obsidian. Men in sharp, black suits emerged from the vehicles, moving with a fluid, disciplined grace that spoke of training and purpose. They didn't look like cops. They looked like something out of a movie, the kind of men who protect presidents or transport secrets. They took up positions around the entrance to my building, their presence transforming the shabby stoop into a fortress perimeter. This couldn't be for me. It was a mistake, a coincidence. Maybe a politician lived in the building, or a witness was being moved into protection. Any explanation, no matter how wild, was more believable than the idea that this small army had been summoned by my accidental text message. A sharp, authoritative knock echoed from my front door. It wasn't the tentative rap of a neighbor or the cheerful bang of a delivery person. It was a solid, uncompromising sound. Once, twice, my heart leaped into my throat. I stood frozen in the middle of my tiny living room, a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming train. The voice from the other side of the door was calm, deep, and devoid of any emotion. "Miss Ilara Vance, my name is Julian. I was sent by Mr. Dante Moretti. Please open the door." Dante Moretti. The name meant nothing to me, but the man, Julian, knew my name. My full name, How could he possibly know my name? Logic had deserted me, replaced by a primal, instinctual fear. The man on the other side of this door was connected to the text, to the fleet of armored cars, to the impossible situation I now found myself in. "I'm not opening the door," I managed to call out, my voice a pathetic, reedy thing. "I understand your hesitation," the voice replied, its calm unnervingly intact. "Mr. Moretti anticipated it. He asked me to tell you that he knows about Leo. He knows about the $200,000 debt. And he knows your mother, Catherine, is waiting for her medication at St. Jude's Pharmacy." Each word was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The casual, clinical way he listed the most terrifying and private details of my life was more frightening than any overt threat. He knew about Leo's debt, the full, staggering amount I hadn't even dared to write down. He knew my mother's name. He knew her pharmacy. This wasn't a prank. This was something else entirely. This was power. The kind of power that could peel back the layers of a person's life with a few keystrokes. My hand, shaking uncontrollably, reached for the deadbolt. My mind screamed at me not to, but my body seemed to be acting on its own accord. The terror of the known, the loan sharks who sent pictures of my door, was suddenly being eclipsed by the terrifying mystery of the unknown. These people, whoever they were, weren't threatening me, not yet. They were offering something, an escape, or a different kind of cage. I turned the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the silent apartment. I pulled the door open just a crack, the flimsy chain still in place. The man standing in the hallway was tall and immaculately dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my entire year's tuition. He had a severe face, with a strong jaw and watchful, intelligent eyes. He wasn't looking at me with aggression, but with a kind of patient, professional assessment. He was a soldier waiting for an order. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice the same calm baritone from before. "We don't have much time. Mr. Moretti is waiting." "Who is he? Who are you?" I whispered, my throat tight. "I am Mr. Moretti's head of security," Julian stated, as if it were the most normal job title in the world. "As for who he is, he's the man who received your text message. And he is your solution." Solution. The word hung in the air between us. A solution to the debt, to the threats, to my mother's medicine. It was everything I had been praying for, delivered to my door by men in black suits, who looked like they belonged to the Secret Service. It was too good to be true, and things that seemed too good to be true usually were. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, trying to inject a strength I didn't feel into my voice. Julian's expression didn't change, but his eyes held a flicker of something pity, perhaps. "The men Leo borrowed from are not patient. According to our information, their patience runs out tonight. They plan on visiting you to collect a down payment. In flesh, if not in crescents. Cash. Mr. Moretti's offer is your only way out. He is waiting in the car. He wishes to speak with you directly. Tonight." The word landed like a stone in my stomach. The finality of it, the cold certainty in his voice, broke the last of my resistance. I looked around my tiny, squalid apartment. This wasn't a sanctuary. It was a trap. And the hunters were coming. Slowly, I unhooked the chain. The metal links felt cold against my skin. I pulled the door fully open, a silent act of surrender. Julian gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Please." This way. He didn't touch me, but I felt his presence behind me like a physical shield as I walked out of my apartment and down the dingy, echoing stairwell. The other men in suits stood like statues, their eyes scanning every window and doorway, their focus absolute. When we emerged onto the street, the world seemed to hold its breath. My neighbors, who usually sat on their stoops gossiping, were nowhere to be seen. The street kids, who played stickball against the brick walls, had vanished. It was as if this convoy of silent, black vehicles had imposed its own reality on my neighborhood, erasing the normal world entirely. Julian opened the rear door of the central SUV. The interior was a cavern of black leather and polished wood, a stark, shocking contrast to the gritty sidewalk I stood on. It smelled of wealth, a clean, subtle scent that was the polar opposite of the perpetual dampness of my apartment. Seated inside, shrouded in the tinted gloom, was a man. I could only see his silhouette at first, a large, powerful shape that seemed to fill the entire space. As my eyes adjusted, details emerged. He was dressed in a suit even finer than Julian's, a dark charcoal gray that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His hands rested on his knees, large and capable, one adorned with a heavy, simple gold ring. But it was his face that captured my attention, that held me in a grip of fascinated terror. He was handsome, but it was a dangerous kind of handsome. His features were sharp, carved from granite, with a strong jaw shadowed by dark stubble and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. And his eyes, even in the dim light, they burned with a fierce, unnerving intelligence. They were the eyes of a predator, ancient and assessing, and they were fixed entirely on me. "Get in, Alara," he said. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble, a sound like aged whiskey and thunder. It wasn't a request, it was an assumption of my compliance. I hesitated on the pavement, one foot in my world of poverty and fear, the other hovering on the threshold of his world of power and mystery. He didn't break his gaze. "The men looking for you are 5 blocks away. They are not as polite as Julian. The choice is yours, but you have about 90 seconds to make it." The quiet, factual way he delivered the threat was more effective than any shout. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was simply stating the variables of an equation. My life was an equation he had already solved. With my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, I climbed into the SUV. The door closed behind me, with a solid, definitive thud, sealing me inside. The sound was like a gavel falling, a judgment rendered. The world outside, my world, was gone, replaced by the hushed, climate-controlled silence of this luxurious prison. The vehicle pulled away from the curb with a smooth, powerful surge. I watched my grimy apartment building recede, the men in black suits getting back into the other cars, the entire operation dissolving as quickly as it had appeared. I was being extracted. It was the only word for it, taken from my life as neatly as a surgeon excising a tumor. I turned my attention back to the man beside me, Dante Moretti. Up close, his presence was overwhelming. He radiated an aura of absolute control, of a power so profound it was simply a part of him, like the color of his eyes. He hadn't looked away from me, his gaze a physical weight. I felt like a butterfly pinned to a board, every detail of my frayed jeans and faded t-shirt scrutinized and catalogued. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm the man who is going to solve your problems," he stated simply. "All of them." "How? How do you know all those things about me? About my mother?" "Information is the most valuable currency in the world, Alara. I am a wealthy man." He said it without a trace of arrogance, as if commenting on the weather. "When I receive a message from a damsel in distress, I find it prudent to learn about the nature of that distress." It was a wrong number. I insisted, the words sounding feeble even to my own ears. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. a fleeting, dangerous thing. There are no wrong numbers. There is only opportunity. Your associate, Leo, was foolish. He borrowed from the Volkov family. They are not in the business of forgiveness. Volkov? The name sounded foreign, harsh. It sent another chill down my spine. This was bigger than a few local loan sharks. This was organized. "What do you want from me?" I asked, cutting to the heart of it. Men like him didn't do things for free. There was always a price. "For now, your cooperation," he said, his eyes finally leaving my face to gaze out the window at the city blurring past. We were moving into a different part of the city now, the rundown tenements giving way to gleaming skyscrapers and luxury storefronts. Later, we will discuss the terms of my assistance. The rest of the ride passed in a tense, vibrating silence. I was acutely aware of every small detail. The subtle scent of his cologne, a clean, spicy fragrance. The way the city lights played across the sharp planes of his face. The sheer size of him next to me in the enclosed space. He was a force of nature, a storm contained within a bespoke suit, and I was a leaf caught in his current. The SUV finally slowed, turning into a private, underground garage beneath a towering glass and steel skyscraper. The garage was filled with other luxury cars, each one worth more than I could ever hope to make in a lifetime. Julian opened my door, and I stepped out onto the pristine concrete floor, my worn sneakers feeling obscene in this temple of wealth. Dante Moretti emerged from the other side, and in the bright fluorescent light, I could see him clearly for the first time. He was even more intimidating than he had been in the shadows. Tall, broad, and radiating an energy that made the air around him feel charged. He led me to a private elevator, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. The touch was possessive, proprietary, and it sent a jolt of something that was equal parts fear and a strange, unwelcome flutter of electricity through me. The elevator ascended silently, the numbers climbing at a dizzying speed. My ears popped. We were going to the top, the very top. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment that was larger than the entire floor of my old building. The far wall was a sheet of glass, offering a breathtaking, panoramic view of the city skyline. The lights twinkled below like a carpet of fallen stars. The space was decorated in a minimalist style, with clean lines, dark wood, and plush cream-colored furniture. It was beautiful, sterile, and impossibly, obscenely luxurious. A gilded cage. I walked numbly toward the window, drawn by the view. It was a vantage point of the gods, looking down on the mortals scurrying below. I could see the faint glow of my old neighborhood in the distance, a smudge of urban decay against the glittering tapestry of the city. It felt 1,000,000 miles away, a lifetime away. "It's a lot to take in." Dante's voice came from behind me, closer than I expected. I turned to find him standing just a few feet away, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He gestured with it toward the city. "From up here, everything seems manageable. Problems look smaller." "My problems don't feel small," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "They feel like they're about to swallow me whole." "They won't," he said with absolute certainty. He took a sip of his drink, his dark eyes never leaving mine. "I told you. I am your solution." He set the glass down on a marble-topped table. "The Volkovs have been informed that Leo's debt is now my concern. They will no longer be contacting you. The $200,000 has been wired to their account." I stared at him, my mind reeling. Just like that? He just paid it? A sum of money that was so vast to me it was almost mythical, and he spoke of it as if he'd bought a cup of coffee. "Why?" I choked out. Why would you do that for a stranger? Because your problem, through a delightful twist of fate, helps me solve one of my own, he said, his voice smooth and persuasive. I find myself in need of a wife. The word hung in the opulent air, so utterly insane, so completely disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. A wife? A temporary one, he clarified, though it did little to lessen the shock. A marriage of convenience. My business associates are traditional. They value stability, family. A wife presents a certain image. It makes a man look settled, reliable, less of a threat, which paradoxically makes him more powerful. I shook my head, trying to clear it. You want to marry me? A stranger you know, from a wrong number text? That's crazy. Is it any crazier than being beaten to death in a back alley for your ex-boyfriend's gambling debts? He countered, his voice sharp as broken glass. I am offering you a way out, Ilara, not just from the Volkovs, but from all of it. Your mother's medical bills will be paid indefinitely. The finest doctors, the best care. Your tuition, paid in full. You will want for nothing. You will live here, in absolute safety. All I require in return is that you stand by my side at a few social functions, wear my ring, and carry my name. In public, you will be my devoted wife. In private, we will be strangers who share a roof. When I no longer require the arrangement, we will divorce amicably. You will be given a generous settlement that will ensure you and your mother are comfortable for the rest of your lives. It's a business transaction. A business transaction. He was talking about marriage, about my life, as if it were a corporate merger. I looked around the vast, empty penthouse. It was a cage, no matter how beautiful. He was offering to save me by imprisoning me. But what was the alternative? Returning to my squalid apartment, to the terror of waiting for the door to be kicked in, to the slow, agonizing decline of my mother's health because I couldn't afford her pills? He saw the conflict in my eyes, the war raging inside me. He moved closer, his presence commanding the space between us. I know this is a lot to process, but you don't have the luxury of time. The world I operate in is not a patient one, and it's a world you are now a part of, whether you like it or not. The Volkovs know I've taken an interest in you. To them, you are now a commodity, a potential weakness, my weakness. The only place you are safe is by my side, as my wife. His logic was twisted, predatory, but it was also undeniable. By intervening, he had painted a target on my back. He had created the very danger he was now offering to protect me from. Why me? I whispered. You could have anyone. You're rich, powerful. You could hire an actress. A flicker of something dark and personal crossed his face. An actress can be bought by my rivals. A model can be tempted. But you have something real to protect. Your mother, your future, your loyalty will be absolute, because your need is absolute. And, he added, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur, I don't like complications. Your text was a sign. You fell into my lap. It's clean. Simple. He reached out and gently tilted my chin up with his finger, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. His touch was surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the raw power he exuded. I will not hurt you, Ilara. I will not lay a hand on you without your permission. This is a contract. But I will protect you, with my life, if necessary. No one will ever threaten you, or your mother again. That is my promise. His words, the solemn vow in his eyes, struck a chord deep inside me. Protection, safety. They were things I hadn't felt in so long. I'd almost forgotten what they were. For years, I had been the protector, the one fighting to keep my mother safe, to keep our heads above water. The thought of letting someone else carry that burden, even a dangerous stranger like Dante Moretti, was a temptation so powerful it was almost painful. My mother had no one to protect her, he said suddenly, his voice soft, the words seeming to be pulled from a deep, hidden place. My father was a powerful man, but he was careless. He thought his enemies would play by the rules. They didn't. They came for her, to get to him. He was too late to save her. The pain in his eyes was raw, a wound that had never healed. I will not make the same mistake. Anyone under my protection is safe. Absolutely. And there it was, the key, the ghost that haunted this powerful, ruthless man. It wasn't just about business. It was personal. In me, he saw a chance to right a past wrong, to protect the woman he couldn't save his mother from becoming. I was a proxy for his pain. The fight went out of me, replaced by a strange, hollow sense of resignation. This was my reality now. The universe hadn't just thrown me a lifeline. It had thrown me into the arms of a shark, promising he would keep the other sharks at bay. I took a deep breath, the clean, conditioned air of the penthouse, a stark contrast to the stale air of my old life. "Okay," I said, the words small but clear in the silent room. "I'll do it." Dante's expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of satisfaction in the depths of his dark eyes. He had won. He had known he would. He gave a single, sharp nod. "Julian will show you to your room," he said, stepping back. The moment of intimacy shattered. He was all business again. "He has already arranged for a wardrobe to be delivered for you. We have a function to attend tomorrow evening. It will be your introduction to my world, as my fiancé." Fiancé. The word felt alien on my tongue. He was moving so fast, cementing my new reality before I had a chance to question it. Julian appeared as if summoned, his expression as stoic and unreadable as ever. "This way, Miss Vance," he said. I followed him down a long white hallway that felt more like an art gallery than a home. The walls were adorned with large, abstract paintings, splashes of color in an otherwise monochromatic world. He opened a door at the end of the hall, revealing a bedroom that was larger than my entire apartment. It had its own wall of windows, a king-sized bed with a mountain of pillows, and an adjoining bathroom that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. A walk-in closet stood open, already filled with racks of designer clothes, shoes still in their boxes, and handbags lined up like soldiers on pristine shelves. "Mr. Moretti took the liberty of having these sent over," Julian explained, his gaze neutral. "He trusts his assistant's taste. If anything is not to your liking, it can be replaced." I walked over to a rack of dresses, my fingers brushing against fabrics I'd only ever seen in magazines: silk, cashmere, lace. It was a princess's wardrobe, a life I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams, and it was all part of the cage, the beautiful, comfortable, luxurious cage. "Thank you, Julian," I said, my voice quiet. "A car will be sent for your mother in the morning," he added, pausing at the door. "She will be moved to the finest private clinic in the state. Mr. Moretti has already spoken to the chief of staff. She will be given a private suite and a full-time care team." Tears pricked my eyes. He had thought of everything. He wasn't just solving my problems, he was eradicating them with ruthless efficiency. It was terrifying, and, to a part of me I was ashamed of, deeply seductive. "Tell him, thank you," I whispered. Julian simply nodded and closed the door, leaving me alone in my new reality. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the mattress so soft, it felt like sinking into a cloud. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window, a pale, frightened girl in a faded t-shirt, a ghost haunting a palace. This was my life now. I was to be the wife of Dante Moretti, a man who moved in a world of shadows and violence, a king in a concrete kingdom. It was just a marriage of convenience, he said, a business transaction. But as I sat there, surrounded by the trappings of his power, I had a sinking feeling that with a man like Dante nothing was ever that simple. His protection felt like ownership, and I was no longer sure where one ended and the other began. The next 24 hours were a blur, a surreal dream from which I couldn't seem to wake. Julian became my silent, ever-present shadow, guiding me through the mechanics of my new life. A quiet, elegant woman named Sophia arrived, an expert stylist who fitted me for the evening's gown with an air of detached professionalism. She worked with the quiet competence of someone long accustomed to the whims of the wealthy, never asking personal questions. Her conversation limited to hemlines and necklines. The dress she chose was a deep emerald green silk that clung to my body as if it were spun from water. When I saw myself in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. The fear was still there in her eyes, but it was now draped in couture. Dante remained a distant, powerful presence. I saw him only once, striding down the main hall with Julian and two other men I didn't recognize. They spoke in low, urgent tones, their faces grim. He didn't seem to notice me as he passed, his mind clearly on other, more dangerous things. The name Volkov was a harsh syllable I caught just as they entered the elevator. It was a stark reminder of the world I had stepped into, a world where business was conducted in whispers and settled with violence. That evening, as I was finishing my preparations, a knock came at my door. It was Dante. He stood in the doorway, breathtakingly handsome, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. He held a small velvet box in his hand. For a moment we just stood there, the silence stretching between us. He was the architect of this madness, and I was his newest, most elaborate construction. "You look acceptable," he said, his voice a low rumble. It was, I suspected, the highest form of praise he was capable of giving. His eyes roamed over me, a slow, possessive appraisal that made my skin tingle. "This is for you." He opened the box. Nestled on the black velvet was a diamond ring so large, so brilliant, it seemed to steal all the light in the room. It wasn't just a ring, it was a statement, a declaration of ownership. I started, my voice failing me. "You will wear it," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He took my left hand, his fingers warm and strong around mine. His touch was firm, confident. He slid the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit, a cold, heavy weight, a beautiful shackle. "Tonight, you are Alara Vance, my fiancée. You are happy, in love, and completely devoted to me. You will smile, you will be charming, and you will say very little. Do you understand?" "Yes," I whispered, mesmerized by the fire in the stone on my hand. "Good." He released my hand, his gaze lingering on the ring. "Julian will be with you at all times. Do not leave his side. The people we will be seeing tonight, they are not our friends. They will be watching you, looking for any weakness. Show them none." The event was at a lavish hotel ballroom, a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. The air hummed with quiet conversations and the clinking of champagne glasses. It was a world away from the greasy spoons and crowded lecture halls I was used to. It was a gathering of predators, all dressed in their finest, their smiles sharp and their eyes cold. Dante's hand was a constant, firm pressure on the small of my back, guiding me, anchoring me. He introduced me to men with powerful names and women with surgically perfected faces. I smiled until my cheeks ached, murmured polite greetings, and clung to Dante's side like a lifeline. Halfway through the evening, Dante was pulled into a conversation with a stern-faced older man. Julian materialized at my elbow. "Mr. Moretti asked me to stay with you," he said quietly. It was then that I felt it. A pair of eyes on me. I scanned the room and found them. A man standing near the far wall, watching me, with an unnerving intensity. He was younger than Dante, with pale blonde hair and cold, light blue eyes. There was a cruel twist to his lips as he raised his glass to me in a mocking toast. "Who is that?" I murmured to Julian, trying to keep my voice steady. Julian's face, usually so impassive, hardened almost imperceptibly. "That is Ivan Volkov, the eldest son." Ivan Volkov. The name sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. He was one of them. One of the men who had been terrorizing me, whose name Dante had uttered like a curse. And he was here, looking at me not as a person, but as a prize. A territory that had been claimed by a rival. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, suffocating. Dante's warning echoed in my head. They will be looking for any weakness. I was the weakness. I was the chink in his armor. I forced myself to meet Ivan's gaze, lifted my chin, and then deliberately turned my back on him, giving my full attention to the meaningless conversation next to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Dante return to my side, his body subtly positioning itself between me and Volkov, a human shield. "It's time to go," he said, his voice low and tight. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, but the air in the car was thick with a tension that was almost unbearable. Dante stared out the window, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists on his knees. The mask of calm control he wore so effortlessly had slipped, revealing the raw fury beneath. When we were back in the penthouse, he finally spoke. "He will not look at you like that again." It was a vow spoken to the city lights but meant for me. "Dante, what's going on?" I asked, my carefully constructed composure crumbling. "This is more than just business, isn't it?" The way he looked at me. "The Volkovs and my family have been rivals for generations," he said, turning to face me, his eyes burning with a cold fire. "They see my interest in you as a provocation. An encroachment on what? They considered their territory, because of that worthless animal Leo. By paying his debt, I claimed it. By putting my ring on your finger, I declared it mine. So, I'm a piece of property? A prize to be fought over?" The words came out sharper than I intended, laced with a bitterness that surprised me. "You are my wife," he corrected me, his voice dangerously soft. "And what is mine, I protect. This is no longer a simple business arrangement, Ilara. By showing you to them tonight, I have made you a part of my world, their target. The gilded cage, as you once thought of it, is now your fortress. It is the only place you are safe." The truth of his words crashed down on me. This wasn't a game I could walk away from. I was in it, deeply and irrevocably. The threat wasn't just some nameless thugs anymore. It had a face. It had cold, blue eyes, and a cruel smile. Over the next few days, the penthouse truly did become a fortress. Julian was a constant presence, and other security personnel patrolled the building's perimeter. Dante was often gone, locked away in his office for hours, or leaving for meetings from which he would return late at night, his face etched with strain. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the quiet hum of a war being waged in the shadows. One afternoon, I was in the sprawling library, trying to lose myself in a nursing textbook, when I heard voices from the hallway. Dante's deep rumble, and another, more frantic voice I recognized with a sickening lurch. "Leo, I don't know anything, I swear." Leo was pleading, his voice thin and reedy with fear. "I just needed the money, that's all. I never meant for Ilara to get involved." "But you let her." Dante's voice was like ice. "You hid behind her. You let her take the threats, the fear, while you ran like the coward you are." I crept to the door, my heart pounding. I peered through the crack. Julian had Leo pinned against the wall of the foyer. Leo was pale and shaking, his eyes wide, with terror as he stared at Dante, who stood before him, radiating lethal calm. "The debt is paid," Dante said. "You are no longer obligated to the Volkovs. You are now obligated to me." He took a step closer, and Leo seemed to shrink. "You will disappear. You will leave this city tonight and you will never return. You will never contact Ilara again. You will not call her. You will not write to her. You will not think her name. If I ever hear that you have so much as breathed in her direction, the consequences will be severe." "Yes, of course, anything," Leo babbled, sweat beading on his forehead. "Julian has a plane ticket for you, and a new identity," Dante continued, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Consider it a gift, a final act of charity on Ilara's behalf. Now get out of my sight." Julian released Leo, who practically scrambled for the door, not once looking back. He was gone, erased from my life as easily as Dante had paid a debt. I backed away from the library door, my body trembling. I had seen the ruthless, terrifying power of Dante Moretti firsthand. He had neutralized the source of my original misery with a cold, quiet threat. He had protected me, and it was the most frightening thing I had ever witnessed. He must have sensed my presence. He turned, and his eyes met mine across the hall. He didn't look angry or surprised. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he walked toward the library, closing the door softly behind him. "You heard," he stated. I could only nod, my throat too tight to speak. "He will not bother you again," Dante said. "That chapter of your life is closed. You threatened him. You made him disappear." "I removed a threat," he corrected me. "It's what I do." He walked over to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a drink, his movements controlled and precise. "The other matter, the Volkovs, is also being handled. It will be concluded tonight." "What are you going to do?" I whispered, afraid of the answer. He turned, the crystal glass in his hand, his face a grim mask. "I'm going to end it, so that you can be safe." He downed the whiskey in one go, the motion sharp and final. "Julian will stay here with you. Do not leave the apartment for any reason." He left without another word. The front door closed with that same sound of finality, and I was left alone in the silence of the vast penthouse. The only sound, the frantic beating of my own heart. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. I paced the length of the apartment, from the window overlooking the city to the cold silence of the library. Every siren I heard in the distance made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. I was living in the lap of luxury, a prisoner in a palace, waiting to see if my keeper would return from his war. It was nearly dawn when he came back. I had fallen asleep on one of the plush sofas in the living room, and the sound of the elevator door opening jolted me awake. He stepped into the room, his tuxedo from the night before disheveled, his tie loosened. There was a dark bruise high on his cheekbone and a small, clean cut across his knuckles. He looked exhausted, dangerous, and victorious. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes softening almost imperceptibly. "You waited up," I was worried, I admitted, my voice thick with sleep. He walked over and sank onto the sofa opposite me, running a hand wearily through his dark hair. It's over. The Volkovs have agreed to a new understanding. They will not be a problem again. I saw the cut on his hand. Without thinking, I got up and went to the large modern bathroom, my nursing instincts taking over. I came back with a first aid kit. I knelt in front of him and gently took his hand. He tensed at my touch but didn't pull away. "Let me," I said softly. He watched me, his gaze intense, as I carefully cleaned the cut with an antiseptic wipe. His hand was large and warm in mine, the skin calloused. This was the hand that had signed checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars, that had held a glass of whiskey, that had, just hours before, delivered violence in the shadows of the city. As I wrapped a small bandage around his knuckles, my fingers brushed against his. A spark of electricity, undeniable and potent, arced between us. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. His face was just inches from mine. The exhaustion was still there, but so was something else. A vulnerability I had never seen before. The mask was gone. I was seeing the man, not the king. "Why?" he asked, his voice a raw whisper. "Why do you care?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "You saved me. You're protecting my mother. You—" My voice trailed off. I couldn't articulate the confusing storm of emotions inside me. Gratitude, fear, and a terrifying, growing attraction. He reached up with his other hand, his thumb gently tracing the line of my jaw. His touch was electric, setting every nerve in my body on fire. "You are my wife, Ilara." He said the words differently this time, not as a role to be played, not as part of a contract. He said it like a fact, a truth, a claim, my wife. And then he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hungry, desperate, filled with all the violence and tension of the past few days. It was a kiss of ownership, of relief, of a darkness in him calling to a part of me I never knew existed. I didn't pull away. I leaned into it, my hands coming up to cup his face, my fingers tangling in his hair. I was kissing him back with a ferocity that matched his own. For a moment, there were no contracts, no cages, no danger. There was only this raw, undeniable connection. When he finally broke the kiss, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. "This was not part of the arrangement," he murmured. "I know," I breathed. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by a familiar, guarded intensity. But something had fundamentally shifted between us. The lines of our business transaction had been irrevocably blurred. "The threats are gone, Ilara," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Leo is gone. The Volkovs are neutralized. Our arrangement has served its purpose. I can give you the settlement now. I'll set you and your mother up in a new city, a new life. You'll be safe. You don't have to stay here." He was offering me an out, the freedom I thought I wanted. The door of the gilded cage was wide open. I could walk away right now and never look back. I could go back to being Ilara Vance, nursing student. I could have a normal life. But as I looked at him, at this dangerous, complicated, and fiercely protective man, I realized with a startling clarity that I didn't want a normal life. I didn't want to leave. The fear I had felt for him while he was gone, the relief that flooded me when he returned, the electricity of his kiss, it wasn't here, part of the contract. It was real. This gilded cage had somehow become the only place I felt truly safe. "Because he was here." "No," I said. my voice clear and steady. "I'm not going anywhere." A slow smile spread across his face. A real smile this time, one that reached his dark eyes and transformed his harsh features into something devastatingly handsome. It was like seeing the sun rise after a long, dark night. "Good," he said simply. He stood up and pulled me to my feet. He reached into the inner pocket of his tuxedo jacket and pulled out another box, this one older, made of worn, dark wood. He opened it. Inside, on a bed of faded silk, was a simple, elegant gold band, intricately engraved with vines. It was old, timeless, and beautiful. "This was my mother's wedding ring," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My father gave it to her. It's been in our family for generations." He took the ring from the box, his movements gentle, reverent. He took my left hand and slid the person's massive diamond engagement ring off my finger, setting it aside on the table. Then he took the simple gold band and slid it onto my finger. It fit as if it were made for me. "The other ring was for them," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the city outside. "A symbol of wealth and power, a warning." "This one," he said, his thumb stroking the ring on my finger, his eyes holding mine. "This one is for me, for us. Alara Vance. I am not asking you to be my wife in name only. I am asking you to be my wife, for real." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of a profound, overwhelming relief. I had been found. I had been saved. And in the arms of this dangerous, impossible man, I had found my home. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, Dante." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly against him, his face buried in my hair. I wrapped my arms around his neck, breathing in his scent, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart against my cheek. The first rays of dawn were beginning to pierce the darkness outside, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was a new day, a new beginning. I looked over his shoulder at the sprawling city below. It no longer looked like a place of threats and fear. From up here, in his arms, it just looked like our kingdom.